What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be taking a look at who Islam Makachev's next opponent should be. So I think we all know that it's pretty much between two guys, Justin Gaethje and Charles Oliveira. I'm going to outline some reasons for each guy as to why they should get the fight. So let's start with Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje, of course, is coming off 2 victories. He had that knockout against Dustin Poirier for the BMF title, and then before that, he beat Rafael Fiziev on the cards. So he has 2 wins over 2 top 10 ranked opponents. That's a big thing, and that's good to have. Charles Oliveira, on the other hand, has only had 1 win compared to Gaethje's 2, and that was against Beneil Dariush, where he knocked Beneil out in the first round, and that was earlier this year. So he's had only 1 fight since coming off of the title shot, and Gaethje's had 2. So you got to take into account some of the other factors here. So you have Charles, who is coming off of a fight against Islam, which he lost. He was finished, and then he goes out and takes out Beneil out in the first round, which is extremely impressive. So his case for the title, it still kind of makes sense. I mean, you had Charles already become a champion, and he held the belt for a decent amount of time. He beat a lot of the top lightweights, including Justin Gaethje. So you can understand why the UFC would feel inclined to allow Charles to get back in there. And also because him and Islam have a pretty good rivalry, and I honestly think that this fight will sell really well. Justin Gaethje, he hasn't had the title, and he hasn't fought Islam Makachev, which actually might work in his favor. The UFC may consider Islam to be needing a new matchup, a new face, because his last 3 fights were all twice against Volkanovski and once against Charles. If he were to fight Charles again, that would just mean he's fought the same 2 guys in 4 different title fights, which I don't know how much that would really make sense, and I think that the UFC would honestly probably prefer a fresh opponent. But Gaethje too, I mean, he did knock out Dustin Poirier, which is a great accomplishment, beat Rafael Fiziev, also great. It's just, it kind of feels unfair to really put him in front of Charles at this point, because that he and Charles fought, and Charles finished him pretty quickly. And that fight really wasn't all that long ago. That fight went down in May of 2022. So it really isn't too far away to where you could consider that fight completely irrelevant to this scenario now. I think it's important to also look at who is the bigger star between the two right now. And while Gaethje does have a lot of love in the MMA community and has been at the top for a while, I still think Charles Oliveira is the bigger current star. I think he's the biggest star Brazil has, and Brazil attracts a lot of eyes to MMA and pay-per-view in general. Also, honestly, a lot of South America does as well. So I think that a fight against Islam, if you have it in March, or if this is a headliner for UFC 300, I think it makes sense. I think this fight could work as a headline spot for UFC 300, and I don't think Justin Gaethje versus Islam would work. I think that fight, if it were on UFC 300, would have to be a little bit lower down the card. Not to mention, I think there's also still excitement in the rematch. I mean, you have a guy in Charles who, no matter what he's done and where he's been, he's always fought back, and he's been on this incredible run, and it's captivated a lot of fans. And you have Islam, who, while he is dominant and he's blasting through a lot of these guys, to be honest, he has shown flaws in his game, and a guy like Charles is just so high level that you really do feel that there's still a chance that he could come out on top. If it were up to me and I had to make the choice, I would probably say let's go with the Charles Oliveira rematch. I think that fight, it still makes a little bit more sense right now, and I still think could be a super profitable pay-per-view for the UFC. So I do think it would be one that would make sense. I still like the Gaethje fight, but I also think there's a lot of other fights Justin Gaethje could have right now. The big one, I think, is that Max Holloway one for the BMF belt. Max, of course, was calling Justin out, saying that he would love to fight him for that title, and that would be an amazing fight, and I really would prefer to see that. And then if he beats Max, then he can go for the title shot, and you can't really have an argument towards it. I think at that point, you'd have to give it to him. So yeah, I think that's what makes the most sense. Either way, I think they're both great fights. I just think the Charles one is more fresh and means a lot more right now. I mean, the rematch was already scheduled as well. Like, Charles was ready to fight and was going to plan on fighting Islam, but of course he had that cut in training, so he was unable to fight. So you could see that the UFC already had in their minds that they wanted to make that rematch. So I think they will end up doing so as well. And even Dana, when he was asked about it, he did say that he'd probably lean towards Charles, but you never really know what can happen with that. Let me know what you guys think, though. Who do you think Islam should be fighting next? Do you think it should be Charles? Think it should be Justin? Or do you think it's somebody else entirely? Let me know down in the comments down below. I want to thank you guys for watching one of my videos once again, and I'll see you guys in the next one.